Have you ever had a moment in your life that seemed so small, so ordinary, that you never imagined it would change everything? Imagine these are you're standing in line at a tiny coffee shop, just another morning, just another day, and without realizing it, the person in front of you is about to alter the entire course of your destiny. That's exactly what happened to Alina, a young seamstress whose simple act of kindness toward a stranger set in motion a story that no one could have predicted. Alina was only 22, a girl with calloused fingers and tired eyes, yet with a heart that refused to harden against the struggles of her world. She lived in a modest rented room above a tailor's workshop in a bustling city, stitching clothes late into the night to make ends meet. She didn't have much, barely enough to cover rent, fabric supplies, and the occasional indulgence of a steaming cup of coffee when her spirit needed a lift up. But she had a dream, and she clung to it with the kind of quiet determination only hardship can shape. That morning, the air was sharp with winter's chill, and Alina wrapped her worn shawl tightly around her shoulders as she stepped into the little cafe tilde copyright on the corner. The place was warm, filled with the scent of roasted beans and pastries that glistened behind glass counters. For a moment, she allowed herself to exhale, as if stepping into that shop was like stepping into a different world. She reached into her purse, feeling the few coins she had set aside for the street, when her eyes fell on the man in front of her. He was old, with silver hair and clothes that seemed more patched than whole. His back curved as though he carried the weight of years, and his hands trembled as he clutched the pockets of his threadbare coat. When it was his turn at the counter, he fumbled nervously with his wallet, pulling out a few crumpled bills, not nearly enough to cover even the smallest cup. The cashier's polite but impatient smile froze, her eyes flicking toward the line behind him. The old man's voice quivered as he asked if perhaps he could get something smaller. Maybe just hot water. People in line shifted uncomfortably, some annoyed, some indifferent. But Alina's heart ached. She couldn't look away. She thought of her own father, who had died years ago, and she thought of hunger, of nights when she had gone to bed without food. She stepped forward before she could stop herself and said softly, "Please, let me cover it." The old man turned, his faded blue eyes widening in surprise, as though kindness was something foreign to him. "Oh no, child," he whispered, "you don't need to a broken bar." But Alina smiled, gently pressing the coins into the cashier's hand. "Please, it's nothing." The man's eyes glistened as the steaming cup of coffee was placed before him. His hands shook as he wrapped them around it, inhaling as though the warmth alone was enough to sustain him. He whispered thank you again and again, his voice breaking, and Alina felt something stir inside her, just something more valuable than the coffee she had given up. They sat together at a small table, the old man sipping slowly, savoring each drop. He introduced himself as Henry. Once, long ago, he had been a carpenter, known for his craftsmanship, but life had not been kind. His wife had passed, his son had gone abroad to work, and with age and illness, he had lost the strength to keep steady hands. Now he wandered the city, surviving on little more than scraps and kindness. Alina listened with the patience of someone who understood what it meant to endure hardship. In return, Henry listened to her story of her sewing, of the tiny workshop where she dreamed of one day opening her own boutique, of the loneliness that came from working long hours in silence. Hours passed as though they were minutes. When Henry finally rose to leave, he pressed her hands between his own, whispering words she would never forget. "You gave me more than coffee today, child. You gave me dignity." She walked home that evening with a curious sense of lightness, though she didn't know why. It had been such a simple thing. After all, she never imagined that this one act would ripple outward, shaping her fate. Days turned into weeks, and Alina returned often to the cafe tilde copyright, half hoping to see Henry again, half wondering if he had simply vanished back into the world of shadows. And then one afternoon, he appeared, sitting quietly at a corner table, a faint smile lighting his weathered face when he saw her. "I wanted to thank you again," he said. "I don't have much, but I carved something for you." From his coat pocket, he pulled out a small wooden charm, shaped like a heart, its edges smooth and polished. Alina's throat tightened as she held it. It was imperfect, yes, but beautiful in its simplicity. "I love it," she whispered, and Henry's smile deepened. Their friendship grew in those brief, stolen hours at the cafe. Copyright. She would bring him bread sometimes, or a scarf she had stitched from leftover fabric. In return, he shared with her stories of resilience, tales of love and loss, lessons carved out of decades of life. And then one day, everything changed. It was raining heavily, the kind of downpour that soaked through even the thickest coat. Alina had just finished a long day of sewing when she saw Henry sitting outside the cafe. Copyright, drenched, shivering violently. She rushed to him, pulling him inside, insisting he take her shawl. His cough rattled his frail body, and fear gnawed at her as she watched him struggle for breath. She knew he needed help, but hospitals were expensive, and Henry resisted, muttering that he couldn't be a burden. That night, she stayed awake worrying, replaying his coughing in her mind. The next morning, she made her decision. She took the little savings she had hidden away for fabric and rent, and instead, she spent it on medicine and warm food for Henry. She didn't care about the cost. Somehow, she would manage. When she handed him the medicine, his eyes filled with tears he could no longer hide. "You are the daughter I never had," he whispered hoarsely, and Alina felt her own eyes sting. She didn't know then that someone else was watching, someone who would change everything. A week later, as she sat across from Henry, coaxing him to eat, the cafe copyright door swung open. A tall man stepped in, shaking rain from his dark coat. His presence was commanding, his features sharp yet softened by the exhaustion in his eyes. He scanned the room, and when his gaze fell on Henry, his entire face shifted to shock, relief, and something deeper flickering all at once. He strode over, his voice breaking as he said, "Father." Alina froze. Henry looked up, startled. Then his trembling hand reached out. "Michaela Broken Bar?" The man knelt beside him, clutching his hand, tears brimming as the cafe copyright buzzed with hushed whispers. And Alina, as she sat frozen, her heart pounding, her mind reeling with questions. Who was this man? Why had he been gone so long? And how, in this tangled web of fate, was her life about to change forever? Have you ever witnessed a moment so raw, so filled with emotion, that it felt like time itself held its breath? That was what Alina felt as she watched Henry and his son Michael embrace in the middle of the cafe. Copyright. She had never seen Henry so alive, his frail body trembling not from sickness but from the rush of joy that poured into his heart at the sight of his long-lost child. For weeks, she had known Henry as a lonely old man, forgotten by the world. Yet in that instant she saw him transformed into a father, into someone who mattered profoundly to another soul. Michael's arms tightened around his father, his jaw clenched as though he was fighting back years of guilt. "I looked everywhere," Michael whispered, his voice breaking. "I should never have left you alone this long." Henry shook his head weakly, tears streaming down his wrinkled cheeks. "You had your life, your work. I didn't want to be a burden." Alina sat frozen at the table, her hands wrapped tightly around her cup as she tried to process what was happening. She had never heard Henry speak of his son beyond the occasional mention that he had gone abroad, and now here he was, a man who carried both the polished confidence of success and the weariness of regret. The reunion drew every eye in the cafe copyright, but for Alina, it felt strangely intimate, as though she were witnessing something sacred, something meant to change the course of her own life. When Henry finally introduced her, Michael turned his gaze toward her, and for the first time, Alina saw the depth in his eyes. There was gratitude there, raw and unguarded, mixed with a curiosity that lingered on her face longer than she expected. "You've been taking care of him?" Michael asked, his voice low but steady. Alina nodded, suddenly self-conscious. "He needed someone. I only did what anyone would do," Henry interrupted firmly, his frail hand clutching hers. "No, Alina, not anyone. Most walked past me. You stopped. You saved me." Michael's eyes softened, and for a moment the mask of strength he carried seemed to slip. "Then I owe you more than I can ever repay." Alina didn't know how to respond. She wasn't used to being seen, let alone thanked. Her whole life had been spent in the quiet shadows of sewing machines and fabric scraps, not in the center of someone's gratitude. That night, as she lay in her small rented room, the memory of Michael's eyes haunted her. There had been something in Emma's wait, a promise, a spark that unsettled her heart in ways she couldn't explain. Days passed, and Michael became a constant presence in Henry's life. He arranged for doctors, medicines, even a small apartment where Henry could live comfortably. Alina was relieved to see Henry cared for, yet she also felt a strange emptiness. The hours they once spent together at the cafe till the copyright dwindled as Michael took over, and though she told herself this was how it should be, her heart ached with the distance. But Michael didn't let her fade away. One evening, as she was closing up the workshop, she found him waiting outside. The rain had dampened his coat, and his dark hair clung to his forehead, but his expression was calm, resolute. "I wanted to thank you properly," he said, not just with words. Alina shook her head quickly. "You don't need to. I never expected anything in return." Michael studied her for a moment, then smiled faintly. "That's exactly why I want to. Come, have dinner with us. My father insists." Reluctantly, she agreed, and that night she found herself sitting at a table with Henry and Michael, sharing a warm meal that tasted of something she had longed for, forgotten a belonging. Henry beamed as though he were watching two pieces of his life fall neatly into place. And as the evening stretched on, Alina found herself laughing, her worries slipping away beneath the gentle rhythm of their conversation. Still, there was a part of her that felt out of place. Michael's world was one of polished shoes, tailored suits, and business meetings in glass towers. Hers was threadbare fabric, midnight sewing, and dreams stitched together with fragile hope. Yet Michael seemed drawn to her in a way that ignored those differences. He listened when she spoke of her dream of owning a boutique. He asked questions, not out of politeness but with genuine interest. He noticed the roughness of her hands, not with disdain but with respect for the labor they represented. Weeks turned into months, and what began as gratitude grew into something neither of them could ignore. Michael would stop by her workshop, sometimes with coffee, sometimes just to sit in silence as she worked. Alina pretended not to notice how her heart raced when he was near, but Henry noticed. Oh, Henry noticed everything. One afternoon, as Alina was mending a dress by the window, Henry chuckled softly from his chair. "You know, child, my son is stubborn. He buries his heart under work and duty. But you a broken bar, you've reached him in ways I never could." Alina flushed, shaking her head. "No, Henry, he's just kind. He feels responsible because of what I did for you." But Henry only smiled knowingly. "Sometimes responsibility is where love begins." His words lingered in her mind, weaving themselves into her thoughts like threads she couldn't untangle. Yet just as her heart dared to believe, shadows crept in. One evening, Michael arrived at her workshop, his face clouded with tension. "There's something I need to tell you," he said. His voice was heavy, his eyes searching hers for understanding. "I'm being transferred back abroad. My company needs me, and it's not optional." The words struck her like a needle piercing too deep. She forced a smile, though her chest felt tight. "Of course, that's a broken bar. Wonderful for you. Your father will be so proud." Michael stepped closer, his hands trembling as they reached for hers. "I don't want to go. Not anymore. Not without you." Alina's breath caught. She wanted to believe him, wanted to throw herself into the promise in his eyes, but fear wrapped around her heart. "Michael, look at me," she whispered. "I'm just a seamstress. My world is so small. You belong to something bigger. I could never fit there." His grip tightened. "Don't say that. You've given me more.